Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yachts. This is episode 87, and this is the wrestling show. And I'm going to talk about the Daniel Bryan interview that happened, that keeps happening, keeps doing interviews. I want to talk about AEW, Dynamite. I'm going to talk about Raw. I'm going to talk about SmackDown. And we're going to end with the Piper documentary. So stay tuned. So I want to talk a little bit about Daniel Bryan. And apparently Daniel Bryan has made comments in interviews that he is kind of tired of wrestling. And he said that at WrestleMania 37, he felt like he was out of body. He felt he had an out-of-body experience, that he was just going through the motions in some ways, that he wasn't connected. He was not with it. And he felt frustrated with that feeling, and he started to question, maybe it's time to stop being a full-time wrestler, because he's never had that experience before. Which made me think a little bit about, is that really the case? I think more of it is that he's tired of the WWE style and the patterned matches. I think what he really wants, and he said this in an interview, he's looking to try and get away for him to still work for WWE and work for other companies. Good luck with that. Vince is an egomaniac, and I don't see him doing that. But if anybody's going to get that out of him, it would be Daniel Bryan, because Daniel Bryan will push for that. I know he wants to wrestle Zack Sabre Jr., which would be an amazing match. The two technical wrestlers meet. The one who has pretty much taken the mantle of technical wrestler from Daniel Bryan, the Bryan Danielson Award, at the in the Wrestling Observer End of the Year Awards. So it would be interesting to see that match. I've always wanted to see him against Okada. I'd like to see him wrestle Tanahashi again. When he faced Tanahashi, Tanahashi wasn't Tanahashi. He was up and coming. I'd like to see him face Ishii. I think that would be great. Minoru Suzuki, Jay White, Kenny Omega. These are the people that we want to see him have the matches. And I don't want to see him have those matches in WWE. I would like to see him have those matches outside of WWE so he can work the style he wants to do and have not these patterned matches. Now, he does a great deal of breaking that pattern, but you can still see that, he has to do a lot of the patterned matches of WWE instead of just letting Daniel Bryan be creative. And I think it's time for him to go back to being Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon, as we all know him. He was the best guy on the independent scene for many years to come, for many years at the time, not many years to come, on ROH. He went all over the place. And I would like to see him finish his career doing the matches he wants to do, as opposed to just, doing WWE style. I know he wants to go to AAA, he would like to go to CMLL, I think is where he wants to go and do a big angle there and lose his hair, something like that. He's always wanted to do that kind of angle, and he's not going to get to do those things in WWE, and I feel like he's just going through the emotions. Now, I know his wife is there, Brie, but, I think he could still exist without being a part of... I guess I would say all in all, the thing that I want from Daniel Bryan is for him to be able to make the matches and do the matches that he wants to do. I would like to see him have technical matches. I'd like to see him do a variety of matches. So I'm on the side of him getting out of WWE. I think he's going to have a great match with Roman Reigns. I think he'll continue to have great matches with everybody. Maybe going to NXT would be great. But I really want to see him out of WWE so he can just be creative the same way Chris Jericho really came alive when he left WWE. And I think the same thing will happen with Daniel Bryan. And when we come back, I will talk about AEW. So stay tuned. Let's talk about AEW. So AEW was kind of a building show. This wasn't the best of show, and I feel like I'm saying that every week, but I really enjoyed it. A lot of interesting things happened on it. It wasn't it's not what is going to be this coming show, which is going to be amazing. Just an absolutely amazing show because it's going to be blood and guts. I'm not expecting blood and guts, but I'm sure there will be quite a bit of blood. Um, I do feel. Oh, I have to apologize. Last week I said that Blood and Guts was this week. I was wrong. It's next week. So it's this coming week, May 5th. May 5th is when we are going to see Blood and Guts. So let's break down AEW Dynamite this week. It started off with Brian Cage versus Hangman Page. Now, a lot of people thought Hangman Page was going to be the guy. A lot of people think he's going to be the guy to beat Kenny Omega. Well, this was not a great showing for him. He ends up losing to Brian Cage in pretty much a squash. So I've got to believe they're not going to go to Brian. They're not going to Hangman Page next. The Young Bucks came out. They had a new look. You know, they have the new jackets. FYI, Seth Rollins made fun of it and said that, you know, he has entered the forbidden door. I don't know what to make of that. He just always is craving attention, and it's ridiculous. The Young Bucks won. They beat Matt Sydal and Mike Sydal. We had Orange Cassidy versus Penta, and Penta did not defeat Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy ended up winning. He has the Penta has his new mouthpiece, which Orange Cassidy went to. I thought it was okay. I'm not really that into this. The big thing that happened on the show is Inner Circle and the Pinnacle Parlay. For all you pirates out there, this was really good. Everyone got a chance to speak except for Jake Hager and wow, I can't remember his name. And Wardlow. What a shock! I couldn't remember Wardlow's name. They were scheduled to talk, but they didn't have enough time. But everybody else got to talk. Sammy Guevara said, "You know, I'll take you all on," and he said, "We don't need a touring cost. We're going. You can have the man advantage." That was good. The best thing that happened was we had MJF running down Chris Jericho saying he's going to take his spot, and then Chris Jericho took him to school and just, you know, cut a promo on him in only the way that a Chris Jericho can cut a promo. And it was really deliberate, and he really just delivered it with a lot of gusto. It was a really good promo. I thought it was impressive, and I was really impressed. They've really set the stage for this show, and I cannot wait for Blood and Guts. This is going to be great. It's going to be War Games, although they can't call it War Games. War Games for them is Blood and Guts, and it's going to be different, but it's going to be. I can't wait. I can't wait to see this match. Chris Statlander beat Penelope Ford. Miro actually attacked Kip. Kip Sabian. Yeah, is that his name? Kip Sabian, and beat him up and said, you know, basically, you are a good boy afterwards. So, you know, the Miro's kind of like crazy, and I like that. They had a thing with the Good Brothers, Young Bucks, and Omega in a limo, saying they had all the gold. This was taped ahead of time, so they couldn't bring out the belt. But now Omega is the Impact World Champion, you know, so he has all the titles. They did a thing later on the show where Eddie Kingston, you know, called him out, and Nakazawa attacked him, and then they, you know, all laid him out. So it looks like Eddie Kingston is probably could be getting the shot at Omega. That's not really the way I want to go with that. I would like to see Christian be the first, be the guy to go against Omega, but, you know, we shall see. Cody returned on this show. He came out of a bus after the factory, and the Nightmare family had a brawl, and QT Marshall went into the bus, and Cody came out, and they brawled, and it was good. It was my favorite thing. Then Darby Allin faced 10. Good match, and Darby beat 10 in a really long, drawn-out match. Really good stuff. One thing I didn't get to talk about was they had 10 talking about how what an honor it was when Brody Lee recruited him and gave him the moniker 10, and he sees the TNT Championship as the main title. So they showed that video package, and it really, heightened the stakes. And Darby Allin, they, as I said, they had a really good match, and with the cradle pen. Darby is really good at getting over with that, that sneaking a win type thing. And then they had Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky come out and attack him, and then Lance Archer came out, and I like the partnership with Sting and Darby Allin. I think Sting is really Darby Allin is becoming such a big star. Maybe he's the guy that beats Omega. I don't know. One thing I didn't talk about, I didn't get a chance to talk a little bit more about was when Kingston, was fighting Nakazawa. They had, Moxley came out. They threatened Don Callis, and they said they want a match. And he said they could, and they want a tag match, and so it looks like we're gonna get Omega and partner of his choosing, I guess, against Moxley and I can't remember his name, Eddie Kingston. So many names. But yeah, I assume it's probably going to be a handicap match so that Omega can stack the deck. Let's talk a little bit about Rebellion. Rebellion was Impact's pay-per-view, and that's where Omega won the Impact Championship. And he also has the TNA Championship. And so he has all the belts. And they had a really nice match, Rich Swann and Omega, but it ended with Omega getting the one-winged angel, and Omega is now the AAA champion. He is the Impact champion. He has the TNA Championship, and he is the AEW champion. So the collector, the Thanos that he's creating, it's going, it's moving. And I thought, this was a great way to do it. On Impact, they did a thing where he attacks Sami Callihan, so that looks like that's going to be the first kind of feud with Omega in Impact, and they're really kind of playing it up as he's taken over the whole company. It was a great. I thought it was a great way to use him, and I'm really enjoying that, and I can't wait for next week. My biggest takeaway from Dynamite this week is watch the parlay. That's the best thing on this show, and then watch the Omega stuff, and then Darby and 10, and then you can't go wrong. Watch the whole show. I'd be honest with you, if I can be honest with you. So that's it. I think it's either going to be Kingston versus Omega at Double or Nothing, or it's going to be Christian versus Omega at Double or Nothing. I'm hoping for Christian. And when we come back, I will talk about WWE. So let's talk about WWE, and we'll start with Raw. This show is awful. I hate it. I hate everything about it. There's nothing for me to enjoy. Braun Strowman pinned Drew, so he is in. It's a triple threat match at WrestleMania Backlash. Ooh boy, I can't wait and don't care. Orton and Riddle, they won their match. I don't care. I think this is a thing that's just going to go nowhere, and it doesn't seem like it means anything. But you know what? Maybe it'll be like Team Hell No. So there could be some light at the end of the tunnel. Charlotte's suspension is over with a week. Wow. This company just doesn't know what it's doing. 1 week and it's over. So that was the big thing. It looks like Alexa Bliss is going to be... she's going to be doing her Fiend gimmick with the other women on the roster. Oh boy, cannot wait and do not want to see it. I just think Raw is awful. I think it is one of the worst shows I have ever seen. There is no thought put into it. No one cares. Nothing's going on there. Drew is doing everything he can to save this show, but it's not savable. It's horrible. I like Lashley as champion, but this is just nothing matters on this show. I could care less what they're doing on Raw. My my personal recommendation to you is to not watch it. Now let's talk about SmackDown. SmackDown was much better. They started off with the Street Profits and Bianca Belair versus Bailey and Dolph and Rude. Bianca Belair wins. As I said, I don't feel they're really using her to the ability that she could be used to. I don't feel like they're making her feel like the star of the show. She's not at Roman Reigns' level, and they're not treating her like the Roman Reigns level of star, and they need to do that. Big E lost to Apollo Crews, so that continues with this new guy. I don't even know his name. But the big thing that happened on SmackDown, the thing that saved this show, because this show was just, it would have been so-so if it didn't have this. They started off the show, it was all about Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns. If Daniel Bryan loses, he is banished from SmackDown. If Roman Reigns loses, well, he loses his title. So we had Daniel Bryan cutting a nice promo in the back. We had Paul Heyman cutting a promo in the back. They had all the superstars talking about it, heels and faces alike, talking about, you know, how this affects everything. They had Seth Rollins talking about it. They had one amazing match. Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan is probably one of the best matches I've seen all year from WWE. They just had a great match. And there was no interference this time, so that was even better. And Roman looked like a monster, and Daniel Bryan just kept looking scrappy, and he kept working the arm. It was all about working the arm on Roman Reigns and weakening that arm. And Roman was just trying to power him down and just beat him down and beat the life out of him. They had a lot of false finishes. Daniel Bryan looked good. Roman Reigns looked good. In the end, it ended with Roman Reigns speared him. He got a 2 count. It looked like Daniel Bryan was gonna maybe get the win, but he just power bombed Daniel Bryan over and over, and then he went for the the guillotine lock, but he couldn't get it in, and then he finally got it in, and Daniel Bryan was forced to tap. It was clean. You know, I wanted to see Daniel Bryan win. I think that's the right way to do it. But you know what? This was a great match. There was no Jey Uso interference. It was just Roman Reigns. He won. Daniel Bryan is gone. Then he came out. He took the 2 chairs. He was going to do concerto on him. Cesaro comes out. Then Jey Uso comes out. They tie him up in the ropes, and they do it anyway. So Daniel Bryan is like hurt, and he's banished, and it was a great way to put heat on this match with Roman Reigns versus Cesaro, which should be a great match if they don't let it be just another interference thing. But that looks like where we're going. It's going to be Cesaro versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania Backlash. No sign of Edge. I guess Edge is gone for the time being. Who knows where he's going? I'm sure he's kind of upset with the build that the WWE did, because, you know, he gave them such a great story, such an amazing comeback, and they just messed it up. And you know what, I gotta say, if he's not gonna, he needed to fight to make sure that it wasn't seen like that. I'm gonna be honest with you, this match felt bigger than WrestleMania. This felt like the match we wanted to see at WrestleMania. They had a really good match. A lot of false finishes. As I said, the crowd was into it. It had a big fight feel. You can't get any better than that. Daniel Bryan lost, but the way he lost, he did everything he could. And, you know, Roman Reigns is the guy. I don't know who they're building him for. I guess they're building him for Brock Lesnar and The Rock, which to me is just like, okay, so we're building him up to lose to 2 part-time guys. I mean, I think that's short-sighted thinking, but that's the way this company operates. But overall, I thought this was a good SmackDown. Raw is awful. Don't watch it. NXT, I thought it was okay. I'm not even going to recap it, but it was decent. The Adam Cole promo was good. So if you wanted to watch anything on NXT, watch the Adam Cole promo. And that's about it for WWE. And when I come back, I'm going to talk about the Piper documentary. So let's talk about the A&E Roddy Piper documentary. I thought this was great. I thought it was much better than the Austin one. I thought, you know, my problem with these documentaries is they're not going in chronological order and they're just skipping a lot of things. They talked a lot about his build up as, you know, going from territories, but they didn't really talk. They talked about Portland. They didn't really talk about him, in the Carolinas enough. They kind of saw him always as a heel. He was a face in a lot of the territories, so they just kind of brushed over that. It was all about, leading into WrestleMania 1. They have Hogan on there saying that, if he just lost to me, brother, man, he would have made so much money. And he tried to say that, Roddy Piper admitted to that. And it's like, no, it wasn't. If the thing that made Piper work was that he didn't lose to Hogan and he was the top heel and he didn't lose to him. And, I guess Hogan still can't get over the fact that he did that. One of my favorite things they did on here was they had John Carpenter on there talking about They Live, which I think is one of the best, other than Batista and Blade Runner 2049. This is probably the best movie to have, to have a wrestler in it. Or the movie The Wrestler, that's another one. But They Live was so great, and he's awesome in it. And he said he gassed him because he needed somebody who's big and strong, but who wasn't a pretty boy. And it really, and he sent him a thing with all his promos, and there was something on there about the bubblegum thing, and he used that in there. And Carpenter credited a lot of things to Piper, and like how great he was to work with, and Keith David loved working with him. He said, they had a physical, fight. At one time he punched him in the face. Keith David, excuse me, not Keith Lee. Keith David punched Piper in the face, and he was just like, "Come on, just keep going, keep going." Those were like my favorite things. They kind of, then jump. They didn't really discuss, his face turns. He didn't really have a face turn. People just started cheering him. They talked, Vince talked about how the great thing about Piper was that, somebody would, insult him, and then you would see him just kind of the gears work before he reacts. And he lets that gunpowder just, mix before he explodes. And I thought that was a good way to look at that. They don't talk at all about WCW, other than at one point where they say that his kids were upset because when Hogan was hitting him with the chair, they destroyed the godlike figure that they had of their father. Um, the kids and his wife are all in this. They talked about how he tried to keep the business completely separate from their lives. He didn't want them to be a part of the business. He didn't want them to see that. They talked about him getting stabbed and him having to line his coat. I don't know how truthful all that is, but he said he got stabbed so many times that he had to line the coat. Sergeant Slaughter talks about bringing him to the hospital. A lot of good stuff here. As I said, my problems are the same problems that I had with the Austin documentary. It's too big of a subject to just do in one episode. I think Piper you could have done in 2 episodes, but they just are just running through these things, and it just doesn't feel like they're covering enough time. I think when they get to Ultimate Warrior, they can go through that, because his career wasn't that long. So, I mean, that might be one. But, they'll probably skip a bunch of things there, too. They'll skip WCW, and they'll skip this, and they'll skip that. And that seems to be my biggest problem with the Piper and the Austin document, is it's skipping around. They talked about, the Hollywood Black Backlot Brawl. Then they go into, him kind of failing in health, and it becomes really sad watching him, fail. He talks about, how a stand-up comedian helped him form an act. His wife talks about, the last day they spent with him, and it's really sad and heartbreaking. The show ends with Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania 35, where she invited the family there and hugged them because she credits Piper. Miss Piper gave her the blessing to use the name. Rowdy Ronda Rousey. She wasn't going to use it unless she got his blessing. So she's a big fan, and I thought she came off so great in this. You got what a fan she is. It's sad seeing the ending there. They talked about firing him from the HBO Real Sports thing. It's misleading the way they do it, as usual. Everything is so misleading because the WWE has so much control over these things. But I like this one more. There was more, I thought, to delve into. It did a pretty good rating, not as good as Austin, but that was expected. But it was a good show. It was a good doc, and you just saw how charismatic Piper was and how he could just do that. And Brett is on there, and he talks about how what an honor it was that Piper allowed Brett to beat him, and he said he always looked out for him and took care of him. And so you just see what a giving man he was and what a great person he was, and just awesome, and an awesome father, and an awesome to his kids and his wife, and they just loved him, and he kept the business away from them, and a lot of guys didn't do that. And I think that shows guts, and that shows integrity, and I've got to say, I'm just really impressed. So I liked it. You can't go wrong with this doc. It's a good doc. Does it go into detail that I'd like it to go into? No, but it's good nonetheless. And with that, I think that about wraps it up. I want to thank you for listening, as always. And as always, you can find me at Justin Yachts, and I will see you next time on the DMF.